Joining us right now via Zoom chat is Dr. George Mychaskiw, founding president and CEO of St. Padre Pio Institute for the Relief of Suffering, and I will get it out eventually. Good morning to you, Dr. Mychaskiw.
Good morning.
Grateful to have you on today. Just recently, maybe was it a month ago, there was a video being passed around the interwebs of a class of medical students taking not the Hippocratic Oath, but some other kind of oath that seemed to enshrine woke culture in their medical practice and their future medical practices. And I thought this was very shocking. And so when we came across the St. Padre Pio Institute for the Relief of Suffering, a new medical school with Catholic identity, one that purports to have a strong Catholic presence in their moral and ethic teaching in medical practice, we thought this was very interesting. Please tell us about what you are doing in Kansas.
Thank you, Joe. We saw the need for a faithful Catholic medical school. I mean, higher education in general is very liberal, very left-leaning. Medical schools are somewhere left of that. And as you saw with that medical school in Minnesota, the University of Minnesota, their pledge was to fight against the oppression of genderism. I'm not even sure what that means, but that's what the pledge was. And just before that, at the University of Michigan Medical School, 60% of their white initial opening class white coat ceremony. So when students start in medical school, there's a ceremony where they get the white coat. It's a very, solemn and celebrating occasion when a medical school student starts their journey. And 60% of the class turned their backs and walked out on the speaker, who was a very prominent, well-regarded physician and bioethicist, simply because this individual had a history of pro-life opinions. The speech itself had nothing to do with abortion. So that's the kind of environment we find ourselves in. Our healthcare system is broken. As I've said, 65 million children have died in a genocide since 1973 that was facilitated by the participation of physicians. The culture of death that we find ourselves in has largely been facilitated by the practice of modern medicine. And we felt there was a need, we being Catholic Healthcare International, felt there was a need for a medical school that would take a strong moral, a strong Catholic position on issues like abortion, end-of-life care, gender identity, those sorts of issues. So we are has signed a affiliation agreement and are developing an independent medical school on the campus of Benedictine College in Atchison, Kansas, to stand for these Catholic values. It will be the only medical school in the world that functions under the doctrine of ex corde ecclesiae, which is the doctrine that St. John Paul II established to define what is a Catholic institution of higher education. So all the senior leadership, all the members of the Board of Trustees will be Catholic, as much of the faculty as possible will be Catholic, and every employee of the medical school, Catholic or not, will have to sign a mandatum of loyalty to Catholic principles.
Wow.
As a condition of employment. So this is not a school that will shy away from calling abortion the murder that it is, from calling euthanasia the murder that it is, from calling gender dysphorias the psychiatric pathology that it is, that requires care with love and compassion, but care nonetheless, not celebration.
Wow, that's amazing, especially since, there's so many things there. One, I can't encourage enough anyone who attends a Catholic university or has family at a Catholic university to read Ex Corde Ecclesiae. We were fighting for that at the University of St. Thomas when I was there. But one thing that I noticed, and I have a lot of friends in medical school, and the whole topic of abortion has been a thing for a decade or more than a decade in the medical schools. But right now, friends who I won't even mention where they go to school or their names because they'll get in trouble, they were telling me in medical school they're being attacked for trying to hold to the authentic view of men and women. And that in medical school, where you would assume that you would understand biology, understand what a man is and what a woman is, and it's necessary for medical care, they're being having gender ideology shoved down their throats, saying that they have to respect their patients' gender pronouns, and they have to they can't ask someone or check someone who identifies in a certain way. Could you speak about that specific issue in regards to your university and the issue that this has on the medical field?
Well, medical schools are all trying to be woke, for lack of a better term. And a lot of them teach what is popular rather than what is right. I mean, a medical school should be teaching what is right, what is scientifically accurate. We know that historically, until this era, the rate of true gender dysphoria was about 0.5%. I mean, really just a blip on the radar, and really nothing much. And we've seen increases in that diagnosis of 400% or 500%. And it's not because there's something in the water. It's not because of some side effect of the COVID. It's because this has become a fad, a trend, if you will, particularly amongst younger people. I mean, you and I both know that the time of early adolescence, early adulthood is a confusing time, and there's a lot of hormonal issues going on, a lot of societal issues, and not everybody who has a confusing thought needs to have puberty blockers and surgery and their genders changed. In fact, that's almost never the case. And in the cases where that is a true pathology, that needs to be addressed in a medical fashion to get these people the care that they need.
So let me ask you a housekeeping question. How long is it going to take? You guys are at you've signed a lease apparently with the school in Kansas, the Benedictine school there, and so you have a partnership. But how long? What's the ramp up? How long does it take to actually get a school open, students admitted and learning to graduation and becoming doctors? What does that process look like?
Complicated. Medical schools are very, very complicated endeavors. They're highly regulated. I like to say that we're more highly regulated than the airlines. The Commission on Osteopathic College Accreditation, commonly called the COCA, is the accreditor deemed responsible by the U.S. Department of Education for approving osteopathic medical schools. They have very high standards. They have multiple standards and policies that a school has to adhere to. So any school that is in operation in the United States operates at a very high standard of excellence. So we have to meet all those standards. And it takes a while to develop all that. It's also a very expensive project. This is about a $120 million project all total. Like Padre Pio, when he first established his Casa for the relief of suffering in Italy, it's driven entirely on goodwill and donations. So if we get all the money that we need, if we meet the accreditation parameters, so there's a lot of ifs there.
Yeah.
But if that all works, we should be able to open our doors for students in 2026 and graduate the first class in 2030. A medical degree is pretty useless, either a DO or MD degree. I mean, anybody with those degrees has to go out and do a residency. So after graduation, the students go out into the United States and do a residency in some field of practice. And once they're finished, then they can start practicing. And we'll be establishing faithful Catholic residencies.
Hold that thought. You were talking about the ramp up and how there's like, you're talking 2030 before we're starting to see a crop of doctors who have gone through such a school. You still have residencies to worry about. And to be frank, I don't want to throw this on the table before I let you finish that thought and continue on. I'm a little concerned about the funding issue. So students who take federal, are they going to be able to have federal loans to go to this school? And if so, federal loans tend to come with strings attached, and that's how schools tend to lose their Catholic fervor. So what does the future look like for your school and for those students, et cetera, Dr. Mychaskiw?
Well, the future still looks good as far as federal loans are concerned. Federal loans are operated under a program called Title IV. And while it's true that there's a lot of strings on a school, thus far, the Department of Education has not infringed on the religious liberty of schools, their First Amendment right to practice expression of religion and meet their mission. Now, there are a lot of other ways of paying for medical school. We do intend to be Title IV qualified and for the students to be eligible for those loans. However, if something changes in the administration or the Department of Education where there would be required for us to violate our rights of conscience, then there are private loans available in the market. I've started 4 other medical schools in the United States, and some of those schools were not eligible for Title IV for several years, just based on their business structure, their governance. And the students did fine with loans in the private market. In general, medical students have the lowest default rate on student loans in the industry. They have the lowest attrition rate on their education. So they're a good credit risk, if you will, for medical school loans. So there's a vigorous private loan market. As you know, there are a couple of colleges, Catholic colleges in the U.S., Christendom College comes to mind in Front Royal, Virginia, that do not take Title IV funding because they don't want to be subject to those strings, if you will, of the government. We don't believe those strings are onerous at the moment because they don't infringe on the rights of conscience, but we keep an eye out for that.
And if it should happen, if it should go squirrely on you, are you prepared to sever those ties?
Yes, we're fully prepared to sever those ties. We will not compromise on Catholic bioethical principles. I mean, abortion is murder, euthanasia is murder, gender identity is a disorder, regardless of what the politicians and the government may require. So if we have to not be Title IV eligible, we'll simply have students get their funding in other methods. And there are a myriad of other ways that students can get funded, and they'll be fine.
And in the meantime, between now and when you plan to open, and when is the time you plan to open?
Well, again, if everything goes according to plan and we meet the standards of the accreditors, we hope to open in 2026. We always put disclaimers on that because there's a lot of things that can happen. I've been very fortunate in the schools I've opened in the past that things have gone pretty much on time, and the accreditors have some timelines that are set. But again, all goes according to plan, and the Holy Spirit brings us generous benefactors to get this done 2026. I mean, yeah, it sounds expensive, but last year just 7 individuals gave over $350 million to Planned Parenthood. Yeah. So I think we can do better than that.
Absolutely. Praise be to God. Hopefully, let's pray for that. And what in the meantime, between now and 2026, there are tons of Catholic medical students across the U.S. and beyond. What do you recommend to these students who are trying to be good Catholics, trying to practice their faith in the medical field, but also specifically the medical schools? How do they keep the faith and not compromise on their morals and still make it through medical school?
I think you just have to stay strong to your conscience. I did my residencies in anesthesiology at Yale University. And as you would expect, Yale is a very progressive secular institution. And at that time, it was quite a while ago, the chemical abortion had just been invented. And our pain service through anesthesia covered those patients because apparently it's a very painful process. And I simply, at the outset, before getting involved with the care side, I just don't do this. I'm not able to participate in these pain service rounds. And to their credit, they were very understanding, accommodating, and they allowed me to express my First Amendment rights and my freedom of conscience. So I give them credit for that, and I would urge students of faith to simply stay to the tenets of their faith. And the consequences of violating your conscience are far greater than the consequence of a bad grade on a rotation. I mean, like I said, fortunately, my experience was positive, but I know other people have had less positive experiences, and I get calls and letters sometimes for students that are, quote, in trouble because they're holding to their freedom of conscience. But we know the Department of Education has recognized the First Amendment right of faith-based institutions to follow their mission, and I would expect that colleges will do the same, or else, well, there are remedies for that.
Doc, as a follow-up question there, when professionals go through the process of going to school and, they graduate, sometimes they have to join associations and things like that. And I'm just wondering, how does that look like for somebody who holds authentic Catholic medical ethics, for them to be a part of these different boards that they might need to continue to pay into, to keep their licensure and that sort of thing?
Well, I think we all have to decide what organizations we're going to pay into and what we're not. In fact, my own organization has occasionally, and like many organized medical societies, tried to be political and jump on a bandwagon, if you will. You can imagine after the Roe v. Wade was overturned, a lot of medical societies became woke and started sending letters to the government about their protests and how horrible it was, this and that. And I reminded them that you don't speak for me or all of your membership. You speak for a percentage of the membership that is advocating these views. So at the risk of alienating members and losing membership, they should retract things like that. I think if you can stomach what your membership organization is doing, you stay with it, or if you don't, if it's violating your freedom of conscience. There are organizations like the American Association of Pro-Life OBGYNs that adheres to firm Catholic principles. So there are always alternatives. You don't have to join the party, if you will.
It's interesting you bring that up because, you hear all the time, the medical community believes this, the medical community has said that, but there are many doctors who don't agree with this. And I guess the biggest one we always hear is, well, the consensus of the medical field is that the child is not alive, or things similar to that. When people say that, what exactly do they mean? Do they mean like these organizations that doctors are a part of? Whenever people say that, are they just lying? What exactly do people mean when they say those kind of things?
Well, they paint with a broad brush, and most of these organizations are political. Some are more woke than others, and they will make these statements on behalf of their membership, but they never check with the membership. As I had written to one organization when I resigned, I said, you said you spoke for all these thousands of physicians. You didn't speak for me, and I'm sure you don't speak for a lot of your membership. So that's what happens. There's no occasion. There's position papers and votes of membership to come up with a position, but usually not. Usually an organization makes a decision and does this. What's exciting about our medical school is that we hope that all of our students will graduate with both a medical degree and a master's degree in bioethics and medical theology.
Oh, wow.
So that means that every year, we hope over 160 students will graduate and go out and be thought leaders in the field, people who establish medical societies, people who are leaders of their local medical staff, people who will show other physicians and other medical schools that it's okay to adhere to Catholic values. It's okay to stand for life. You don't have to do what's politically convenient and what's popular.
So we're coming down to the wire here on our conversation with Dr. Mychaskiw about this, but so a couple of questions here. One is, in an increasingly woke world where they're not doing the Hippocratic Oath, but they're doing the woke oath, are these doctors going to find employment? Will they have to create their own practices in order to make a living and care for patients? Number one. Number two, how easy will it be? Will there be a registry of these graduates and these doctors so that the faithful can seek them out and try to become their patients when they are, in fact, doctors? What say you, Dr. Mychaskiw?
We're not concerned about their employment. I mean, there's a tremendous need for physicians in the United States, and we'll be working with Faithful Catholic Systems for the students' clinical education. They go to school for 2 years on the Kansas facility to do classroom work, but then 2 years will be in hospitals and clinics around the country. We're working with the OSFs in Illinois, the Franciscan Alliance in Indiana, parts of Trinity in Michigan to deliver that Faithful Catholic clinical education. And then when they graduate, we believe they'll find a lot of gainful employment, because who do you want taking care of you as a physician when you're in the hospital? You don't want somebody running a social agenda. You don't want somebody that is campaigning for office. You want somebody who cares for you as a human being created in the image and likeness of God, cares for you with love and compassion, and is an excellent physician. And I think healthcare systems will seek out our physicians, as will patients, because we stand for patients' life from conception to natural death. And the first thing that our physicians will not think about when you're old and disabled and infirm is, well, maybe we should just not give you water so you can die quicker.
Right.
Our physicians will care for you as a moral human being, equal to others in the light of God. So I'm confident that our graduates will do very well. And there are directories of faithful Catholic physicians in different specialty fields.
Well, that's good to hear. We're going to be keeping a close eye on this. I think there's a great website here, CatholicMedicalSchool.com. Is that the best place for people to go?
That, or through the Catholic Healthcare International, www.CHI-USA.com, and there's a section there for the medical school, and there's a lot more information on there.
All right, Dr. George Mychaskiw, God bless you. God love you. Thank you for your time today. We appreciate this.
Thank you. God bless.
All right, that's going to do it for hour number 1 of Catholic Drive Time. That ought to be very interesting. Coming up in the top of the next hour, Brent Haynes, Attorney Brent Haynes, is going to be on to catch us up on some COVID and some legal issues related to the woke agenda. All that, plus the game show and the after show, all coming up next hour. Go to grnonline.com/CDT.